I was hiking alone on the outskirts of the Colorado wilderness, something I'd been doing for the past 5 years since my divorce. The trail was familiar, the rhythm of my footsteps meditative, the silence of the forest exactly what I needed after another difficult week at work. I'm 52 years old, and I've learned that solitude is sometimes the best medicine for a weary soul. But that afternoon, solitude became something unexpected. I first noticed the Coyote Pup about 2 miles into my hike. It was small, maybe 3 or 4 months old, with that distinctive reddish-brown coat and oversized ears that made it look almost comical. It appeared suddenly on the trail ahead of me, and I froze, my heart rate spiking. I'd been warned about coyotes in this area, had taken precautions, had learned what to do if I encountered one. But this pup didn't seem threatening. It seemed lost. The young animal watched me with dark, intelligent eyes, its head tilted slightly as if assessing whether I was a threat or a potential ally. I stood perfectly still, remembering the advice I'd been given. Don't run, don't make sudden movements, appear larger than you are. But the pup didn't advance. Instead, it turned and began walking down the trail in the direction I was heading. I waited several minutes before continuing my hike, assuming the pup would disappear into the forest. But it didn't. Every time I looked ahead, the small coyote was there, trotting along the trail, occasionally glancing back as if to ensure I was still following. It was the strangest thing I'd ever experienced in all my years of hiking. For the next mile, I followed the pup, my mind racing with questions. Was it sick? Was it separated from its mother? Was this some kind of trap, a lure to draw me into danger? But nothing about the pup's behavior suggested malice. If anything, it seemed almost deliberate, as if the young animal had chosen me for a reason. By the time we'd walked another mile together, I'd stopped questioning and started accepting. The pup had become my companion, and I had become its guide. We moved through the forest in an odd partnership. Me, a middle-aged woman who'd spent the last 5 years rebuilding her life after heartbreak, and a young coyote that seemed to have decided I was worth trusting. I began to notice details about the pup that concerned me. Its ribs were visible beneath its coat, suggesting malnutrition. Its fur was matted in places, and there was a slight limp in its back left leg. This wasn't a healthy young animal. This was a creature in distress, and somehow it had found me. I stopped at a small stream and knelt down, cupping water in my hand. The pup approached cautiously and drank deeply, its entire body trembling, what I could only interpret as relief. I watched as the young animal drank, and I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just an encounter with wildlife. This was a moment of connection, a recognition that this creature needed help, and I was in a position to provide it. "Where's your mother?" I asked softly, knowing the pup couldn't answer but needing to voice the question anyway. "Where's your family?" The pup finished drinking and looked up at me with those dark eyes. Then it turned and continued down the trail, and I understood that I was meant to follow. Whatever was happening, whatever this pup was trying to show me, I needed to see it through. We walked for another hour, the sun beginning to lower on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The pup moved with purpose, occasionally pausing to ensure I was still behind it, occasionally making soft vocalizations that seemed almost like communication. I found myself talking to the young animal, sharing my thoughts, my fears, my hopes for what this encounter might mean. "You're going to be okay," I told the pup. "I'm going to make sure of that." The pup led me off the main trail into a more densely forested area that I wouldn't have explored on my own. My rational mind was screaming warning. This was dangerous. I was going deeper into wilderness. I was following an animal I didn't understand. But something deeper than rationality was guiding me forward. Instinct, perhaps. Or maybe just the recognition that this young creature had chosen to trust me, and I couldn't betray that trust. We came to a small clearing surrounded by dense trees and thick undergrowth, and there, in the center of the clearing, I saw what the pup had been trying to show me, a den, partially hidden by rocks and vegetation, and outside the den, a mother coyote lying motionless on her side. My breath caught in my throat. I approached slowly, carefully, aware that a protective mother could be dangerous. But as I got closer, I realized the mother wasn't moving because she was protecting her territory. She wasn't moving because she couldn't move. The coyote was severely injured, her back leg clearly broken, her breathing shallow and labored. The pup ran to its mother and pressed against her body, making soft, whimpering sounds. I knelt down, keeping my distance, assessing the situation. The mother coyote's eyes tracked my movements, but there was no aggression in her gaze. There was only pain and desperation, and a kind of resignation that broke my heart. I understood then why the pup had led me here. The young animal had been trying to get help for its mother. It had somehow understood that humans could help, that I specifically could help, and it had taken the risk of approaching me, of trusting me, of leading me to this place. "Oh, sweetheart," I whispered, tears beginning to stream down my face. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you've been dealing with this alone." I pulled out my phone, grateful that I had signaled this far into the wilderness. I called the local wildlife rescue center and explained the situation. The woman on the phone was professional but kind, asking me questions about the coyote's condition, the location, the pup's behavior. She told me that help would arrive within the hour and that I should stay with the animals to keep them calm. I spent the next hour sitting near the injured mother coyote and her pup, speaking softly, offering what comfort I could without getting too close. The mother's breathing remained labored, and I could see the pain in her eyes, but she seemed to understand that I was there to help, not to harm. The pup stayed close to me, occasionally returning to its mother to press against her body, occasionally looking at me as if asking whether help was really coming. I found myself making promises to the young animal, promises that I would do everything in my power to ensure its mother survived, that I would help however I could. "Your mom is going to be okay," I told the pup, though I wasn't certain if that was true. "The people who are coming, they're going to help her. They know how to fix broken bones. They know how to make her better." As the sun continued to lower on the horizon, the forest began to take on a different character. The sounds changed, the light became more dramatic, and I became acutely aware of how isolated I was, how far from civilization, how dependent I was on the rescue team actually arriving. But I didn't leave. I couldn't leave. The pup had trusted me, and I wasn't going to betray that trust. When I heard the sound of vehicles in the distance, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The rescue team had arrived. Help was here. The mother coyote and her pup were going to get the care they needed. 2 wildlife officers emerged from the forest, carrying equipment and moving with the efficiency of people who'd done this many times before. They assessed the situation quickly, speaking to me in low, professional tone, asking questions about how I'd found the coyotes, how long the mother had been injured, whether the pup had shown any signs of aggression. "The pup led me here," I explained, my voice still shaky with emotion. "It came to me on the trail and led me directly to its mother. It was asking for help." The officers exchanged a glance that suggested they'd heard many stories in their career, but this one seemed to resonate with them. They worked carefully and gently, sedating the mother coyote before carefully placing her on a stretcher. The pup whimpered but didn't resist as one of the officers gently guided it into a carrier. "You did a good thing," one of the officers said to me as they prepared to leave. "That pup's mother might not have survived another night without help. You saved her life." I followed the rescue team back to their vehicle, my legs shaky, my emotions overwhelming. I'd come out for a simple hike, seeking solitude and peace, and I'd ended up being part of something extraordinary. The officers gave me information about the wildlife center, told me that I could call to check on the coyote's progress, and thanked me for my compassion. The drive back to my car was surreal. I kept replaying the events of the afternoon in my mind, trying to process what had happened. A young coyote had approached me, had trusted me, had led me to its injured mother. It defied everything I understood about wildlife behavior, about the natural wariness that wild animals should have toward humans. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the pup, about the mother coyote, about the moment when I'd realized what the young animal had been trying to communicate. I thought about how often we assume that animals are incapable of complex thought, of planning, of asking for help, but this pup had done all of those things. The next morning, I called the wildlife center. The woman who answered recognized my name immediately. Apparently, the officers had already told her about my encounter. She had good news. The mother coyote's leg had been set, and while her recovery would be long, she had a good chance of survival. The pup was healthy, just malnourished, and was being cared for alongside its mother. "The pup has been asking for you," the woman said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "It keeps looking toward the door, as if expecting you to walk through it." I made arrangements to visit the wildlife center the following week. I needed to see the pup again, needed to confirm that it was okay, needed to understand what had happened between us. The wildlife center was a sprawling facility dedicated to rescuing and rehabilitating injured and orphaned animals. The woman who'd answered my call, whose name was Dr. Sarah Chen, gave me a tour of the facility before taking me to see the coyotes. She explained the mother's injuries in detail, the treatment plan, the expected timeline for recovery. "Your pup is remarkable," Dr. Chen said as we walked through the facility. "We've been studying its behavior, and it's unlike anything we've seen before. The level of intelligence, the ability to communicate need, the trust it's placed in you. It's extraordinary." We arrived at the enclosure where the mother coyote and her pup were being kept. The mother was resting, her injured leg elevated and bandaged, but her eyes were alert and aware. And the pup, the moment it saw me, it made a sound that was unmistakably one of recognition and joy. I knelt down, and the pup approached the fence, pressing its small body against the barrier. I reached through and stroked its fur, feeling the warmth of the young animal, the reality of its presence. Tears streamed down my face as I realized the full weight of what had happened. "Thank you," I whispered to the pup. "Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for letting me help." Dr. Chen stood beside me, giving me space but remaining present. "The pup's mother is going to recover," she said. "And when she does, we'll release them both back into the wild. But because of you, because you answered the pup's call for help, they both have a future." I spent the next hour with the coyotes, talking to them, watching the pup play, observing the mother's slow but steady recovery. I realized that this encounter had changed me in ways I was still processing. I'd come to the wilderness seeking solitude, seeking escape from the pain of my divorce and the disappointments of my life. But instead, I'd found purpose. I'd found a reason to believe that my presence in the world mattered, that my compassion could make a difference. Over the following weeks, I visited the wildlife center regularly. I watched as the mother coyote's leg healed, as she regained her strength, as she and her pup began to interact more actively. The pup grew visibly, its coat becoming shinier, its movements more confident. And with each visit, the bond between the young animal and me deepened. Dr. Chen began to involve me more actively in the coyote's care. She taught me about wildlife rehabilitation, about the specific needs of coyotes, about the challenges of preparing wild animals for release back into their natural habitat. I found myself becoming passionate about this work in a way I hadn't expected. One afternoon, Dr. Chen asked me if I'd ever considered volunteering at the center. "You have a gift," she said. "The way the animals respond to you, the compassion you show, it's rare. We could use someone like you," I didn't answer immediately. I thought about my job, about my life in the city, about the routine I'd established over the past 5 years. But I also thought about the pup, about the moment it had approached me on the trail, about the purpose I'd felt when I realized I could help. "I'll think about it," I told Dr. Chen, but I already knew what my answer would be. Over the next month, I made arrangements to reduce my hours at work. I began volunteering at the Wildlife Center 3 days a week, learning everything I could about animal rehabilitation, about the specific needs of different species, about the challenges of preparing wild animals for release. The work was fulfilling in ways I couldn't have anticipated. I was helping creatures that couldn't help themselves. I was using my compassion and my intelligence to make a tangible difference in the world. And I was doing it alongside people who shared my passion, who understood the importance of protecting wildlife, who believed that every creature deserved a chance at life. As the weeks turned into months, the mother coyote's recovery progressed remarkably. Her leg healed, her strength returned, and her behavior began to shift from that of a captive animal to that of a wild creature preparing for release. The pup, now nearly full grown, was developing the skills it would need to survive in the wild: hunting instincts, territorial awareness, the ability to navigate the forest. Dr. Chen explained that the time was approaching when the coyotes would be ready for release. The mother needed to be strong enough to protect herself and her pup. The pup needed to be old enough and skilled enough to survive independently. And both needed to be psychologically prepared for the transition from captivity to wilderness. "The pup will remember you," Dr. Chen told me one afternoon as we watched the young coyote practice hunting techniques on live prey. "Animals have long-term memory, especially when it comes to creatures that have shown them kindness. When we release them, the pup will carry that memory with it." The thought of releasing the pup back into the wild was bittersweet. I'd grown attached to the young animal, had spent months caring for it, had watched it grow from a malnourished pup into a healthy, confident young coyote. But I also understood that this was the goal, that the pup belonged in the wild, that my role was to help it return to its natural habitat. I began to prepare myself emotionally for the release. I spent extra time with the pup, talking to it, explaining what was going to happen. I knew the animal couldn't understand my words, but I believed it could understand my intention, could sense my love and my commitment to its well-being. "You're going to be okay out there," I told the pup during one of my final visits before the planned release. "You're strong, you're smart, you're going to survive and you're going to thrive, and I'm going to be so proud of you." The day of the release arrived on a cool autumn morning. Dr. Chen had selected a location in the wilderness that was far enough from human settlements to be safe, but close enough to water sources and prey animals to give the coyotes the best chance of survival. A team of wildlife officers, myself and Dr. Chen, made the journey into the forest, carrying the crates containing the mother coyote and her pup. We hiked for several hours, moving deeper into wilderness, until we reached a location that Dr. Chen deemed appropriate. The crates were carefully positioned and we opened the doors, allowing the coyotes to emerge at their own pace. The mother coyote stepped out first, her movements cautious but confident. She sniffed the air, her ears alert, her body language showing recognition of her natural habitat. Then the pup emerged, and for a moment, the young animal paused, looking back at me. I knelt down, tears streaming down my face, and met the pup's gaze. "Go," I whispered. "Go live your life. Be wild, be free, be everything you're meant to be." The pup made a soft sound, something between a whimper and a chirp, and then it turned and followed its mother into the forest. I watched as they disappeared into the dense vegetation, watched as the wilderness reclaimed them, watched as they returned to the life they were meant to live. Dr. Chen placed a hand on my shoulder. "You gave them both a second chance," she said. "That's something to be proud of." I nodded, unable to speak, my heart full of emotions I couldn't quite name. Pride, sadness, joy, loss, all of it mixed together in a way that felt both painful and beautiful. In the months following the release, I threw myself into my work at the wildlife. I reduced my hours at my corporate job even further, eventually transitioning to part-time work so I could dedicate more time to animal rehabilitation. The work was challenging, often heartbreaking, but it was also the most meaningful thing I'd ever done. Dr. Chen began to mentor me more formally, teaching me the skills I would need to become a certified wildlife rehabilitator. I attended workshops, studied animal behavior, learned about the specific needs of different species. I discovered a passion I didn't know I had, a purpose that had been waiting for me all along. The story of the Coyote Pup and how it had led me to its injured mother began to spread through the wildlife community. Local news outlets picked up the story, and it was featured in several publications. People reached out to me, sharing their own stories of encounters with wildlife, asking for advice on how to help injured animals. But for me, the most meaningful part of the legacy wasn't the attention or the recognition. It was the knowledge that the mother coyote and her pup were out there in the wilderness, alive and thriving because I'd answered the pup's call for help. It was the understanding that my presence in the world mattered, that my compassion could make a tangible difference. One afternoon, about 6 months after the release, I was hiking on the same trail where I'd first encountered the pup. I wasn't expecting to see the coyotes. The wilderness is vast, and the chances of a chance encounter were minimal. But as I rounded a bend, I saw them. The mother coyote and her pup, now nearly full grown, were moving through the forest with the confidence of wild animals that had successfully adapted to their environment. The pup paused when it saw me, and for a moment our eyes met across the distance. I saw recognition in that gaze, a memory of the connection we'd shared. Then the pup turned and followed its mother deeper into the forest, and I understood that this was how it should be. The pup had moved on, had become fully wild, had integrated into the ecosystem. But the bond we'd shared, the moment when a young animal had trusted me enough to ask for help, that would stay with me forever. A year after my first encounter with the Coyote Pup, my life had transformed in ways I couldn't have anticipated. I'd left my corporate job entirely and was now working full-time at the Wildlife Center as a certified wildlife rehabilitator. My salary was lower, my schedule was more demanding, but my sense of purpose was infinitely greater. I'd also made changes in my personal life. I'd moved closer to the Wildlife Center, had built a community of people who shared my passion for animal welfare and conservation. I discovered that the loneliness I'd felt after my divorce wasn't something that needed to be escaped. It was something that could be transformed into compassion, into purpose, into meaningful work. Dr. Chen had become a mentor and a friend. She'd helped me navigate the challenges of working in wildlife rehabilitation, had supported me through the difficult moments when animals didn't survive despite our best efforts, had celebrated with me when animals were successfully rehabilitated and released. I'd also become involved in advocacy work, speaking at schools and community centers about wildlife conservation, about the importance of protecting wild spaces, about the intelligence and emotional depth of animals that many people dismissed as simple creatures driven only by instinct. The work was challenging, often heartbreaking, but it was also deeply fulfilling. Every animal I helped, every creature I rehabilitated and released back into the wild felt like a small victory against the forces that were destroying natural habitats and threatening wildlife populations. 2 years after my first encounter with the Coyote Pup, I was leading a group of volunteers through the Wildlife Center when one of them asked me about the most meaningful moment of my career. I thought about the question carefully, considering all the animals I'd helped, all the successful rehabilitations, all the releases back into the wild. It was the beginning, I said finally. It was the moment when a young coyote approached me on a trail and asked for help. That moment changed everything. It showed me that animals are far more intelligent and emotionally complex than we give them credit for. It showed me that compassion can transcend species boundaries. And it showed me that my life could have purpose and meaning beyond what I'd imagined. I thought often about that first encounter, about the pup's trust, about the mother coyote's desperation, about the moment when I'd realized that I could make a difference. That encounter had been a turning point, not just in my career, but in my understanding of who I was and what I was capable of. The divorce that had seemed so devastating at the time had actually been a gift. It had forced me to reevaluate my life, to question what truly mattered, to seek solitude in nature. And in that solitude, I'd found not just peace, but purpose. I often returned to the trail where I'd first met the pup, hoping for another glimpse of the young coyote and its mother. I never saw them again, but I didn't need to. I carried them with me in my heart, in my work, in my commitment to protecting wildlife and wild spaces. The Coyote Pup had taught me that sometimes the most profound moments in life come when we're willing to listen, to trust, to answer the call for help even when it defies our understanding. That young animal had changed my life, had given me purpose, had shown me that I was capable of making a difference in the world. And in return, I dedicated my life to helping creatures like that pup, to protecting the wild spaces they depended on, to ensuring that future generations would have the opportunity to experience the wonder and beauty of wildlife. The pup had asked for help and I'd answered. And in answering, I'd found myself.